Today we are going to learn how to use intents in Android. So what do intents let you do? One thing they let you do is open other activities in your application. And you can even use them to send information to that activity. For example, let's say I type in, "Hello, how are you?" When I click Open Activity, it opens another window that says, "Hello, how are you?" Exactly what I typed. Another thing you can do is get information from other applications. Let's say I click on Get Photo. It opens the photo viewer, and when I click on a photo, it then sends that photo back to the application and displays it right here. I can also send requests to other applications. If I click on Open Maps, it'll open Google Maps to a specified latitude and longitude, and I even labeled it as treasure. And you will learn how to do all of this in the tutorial today. We are now going to create a new Android Studio project. You can click on File, New, and Project should be one of the options. Let's call this Intents Demo. You can leave the company domain and change the project location to whatever you want it to be. Click Next. Let's leave the minimum SDK at 4.0.3. This just means that devices running Ice Cream Sandwich or higher will be able to run this app. And we want an empty activity. So just click Empty Activity, Next. And you can leave this and click Finish. You should now have a window that looks like this. This is the new project. The first thing we want to do is create some of the screen layouts. And you can do that in the Res folder, Layout, and Activity Main, because that is what we called it. And let's give it some time for it to initialize. And this is the screen we have here. Looks pretty good, but we need to add our own stuff. So it's pretty easy to do this. Remember, it's just a drag and drop type thing. And if you remember how it looked in the emulator, we had 3 buttons. So let's just go ahead and drag and drop in 3 buttons. 1, 2, and one more, 3. And the first one said, if you double click, you can get this quick edit thing here. The text should be Start Activity, and the ID we will call Start Activity button. Just remember, this is used to, you can just say yes. This is used to refer to it later. The second one will say, this is for Get Photos, and we will call it Get Photos button. Looks good. And the last one was Open Maps and Open Maps button. And you can orient it however you want on the screen. You can also see a quick, if you click on text down here, this is called an XML file, and it shows all the attributes. And all you can see is we changed text to Start Activity, we changed the ID as well, and we did for all of these, but XML is something I think should be covered later. And we needed some more things. We also needed a text field that you can type into, and that's called an edit text. And if you notice right now it's kind of small, that's just because there's no text in it. And if you go back down to text and edit text, we're just going to add an attribute called width, and we'll just set it to 150 dp. And like I was saying, these are topics that probably will be covered later, but it's more visible now. And we will then make this ID, we can just leave it at edit text, and we needed one more, and that is an image view, and that is so we can display the image later. And it's also small. That's just because we haven't set an image yet. But if you go back to the XML, we can just set width. If you type in width, it'll layout. Oh, actually, it's already here. Width we'll just set to 150 dp, and height, let's do 150 dp as well. And now you should have something that looks like this, orient it however you want, and we'll leave it at image button, and this is our layout. Okay, my bad actually. I accidentally dragged in an image button, but we wanted an image view. So I can just right click and delete this. Instead, we want to do an image view. And we'll just do the same thing we did before. We'll go here and we'll set the width to 150 dp and height 150 dp right here. And here's our image view. It is empty because we have not yet given it any image to display. However, once we set it to something, it will obviously show it. We have fixed the layout. We can start coding the app. You do that in main activity. So what all do we need to do? First, we need to define all of the variables that will hold the views that correspond to views in the layout. So what did we have? We had 3 buttons for start activity button. We had a button for get photos button. Button. And we also had a button for open maps button. We have a edit text, which we can just call edit text, and image view, we'll call image view. Great. So these are variables that we will use. However, we have not yet binded them to anything. How do we do that? Do you guys remember? Well, if you were thinking you use find view by ID, then you are correct. So first you're doing start activity button equals button find view by ID r.id dot start activity button. And all that's saying is that whatever view has the ID start activity button, and if you remember, we actually gave the ID start activity button here, that one is now bind to this variable. And we will do the same thing for all the other variables. So we can, there's 3 buttons, and this one will be get photos button, and the ID for that was get photos button. So we're trying to keep it consistent here with the same names. Open maps button will be open maps button. We also have the edit text, which is edit text type this time. Find view by ID r.id dot edit text. And we have the image view equals image view find view by ID r.id dot image view. Now we have binded all of the variables to something that corresponds to the view in the layout. So now, what's next? If you think about it, what we really need to do is call something that happens when the buttons are clicked. And there's actually a really easy way to do that, and we talked about it in the last lecture. It's called setting an on-click listener. So how do we do that? Well, first we have the start activity button dot set on-click listener. And in this, you will be creating a new, if you start typing V, it'll autocomplete for you. And you're adding a new on-click listener. And basically, whatever is in this function will be called as soon as start activity button is clicked. So what did we want to do when it's clicked? Well, this is first where intents come in handy, because we essentially need it to start the activity. And the way you actually do it is you create an intent, and we'll call it intent, and you're setting it equal to, well, first you're actually creating a new intent, and this is just a basic constructor. And the first parameter is actually called the context, and it's something that'll be covered later, but just type in get application context for the first parameter. And then the second parameter is actually the activity that will be opened, and let's call that new activity dot class. If you notice, it's giving an error. That's because we don't actually have a new activity class yet. So let's do that. If you right click on this, new activity, and we'll just make it a blank activity. Let's call it new activity, and just leave it. And just like that, we now have a new activity class that will correspond to this new activity here. And give it some time. It's syncing the Gradle, so that takes some time. However, all these errors will go away. But yes, so now this intent, basically when it starts, will open the new activity class. And you can then just type in start activity, and it takes a parameter of type intent, and there we go. That will start the activity. So if I run the code we have currently made, when I click start activity, you'll see that it just opens a new activity. That's cool. But now we want it to show whatever we type in here. So how do we do that? Well, let me show you. It's actually quite basic. You think about it like this. You have a string, and let's call it message, which is basically going to be set to whatever is currently in the edit text. And if you remember from the first lecture, this is the line you used, edit text.getText.toString. Now message is binded to whatever we had in the edit text. Now we have to pass it to the other variable. And you do this using something called extras. The way you do that is you do intent.putExtra. And the first variable is actually a unique key you will use to refer to the extra. Think of it something like the key in a dictionary. The way you will do that is create a public and this is you can really do this any way you want. This is just a convention I like using. You're creating a string, and we'll call it extra message equals extra message. And this is just the easy way for us to now give the key extra message, and the value we'll give it is just message. Easy enough. So now when we start the activity, the intent that is sent will also contain this extra message. And now we want to implement it so that the activity that is started receives it. So if you remember, you can ignore some of this stuff down here. This is just because when we created the new activity, we didn't click on blank activity. So this is just some extra Android stuff. You can just leave that out for now, just like, enter it out. So how will we do that? Well, it's also pretty basic. The way you do it is you have an intent, and you'll call it intent, but you'll instead do get intent. Because think about it, this is opened because of an intent. So when you call get intent, it's now binding this to exactly the same intent that you used to start this activity. And now you have another string message, and that'll equal intent dot get string extra, because it's a string. And now how do we refer to the key we use to bind a message? Well, you saw how you remember how I put originally public static final string extra like that? That was actually on purpose. So now we can simply refer to it as main activity dot extra message. It just helps keep the code a little bit easier to follow. Now message will be binded to whatever we passed into message. And because we need to display it somewhere, we'll now edit that layout. It'll be ignore this content new. We called it activity new. It's initializing the library. We can close this down here. And we're just going to add in a simple, content. No, you have to go to content new. In case you don't have this, you will actually be editing the activity new. You will go to content new. You will add in a text view, and we'll just leave the ID at text view. Now when you go to new activity, first we have to create the variables like we did before. So text view, okay. You're going to bind it to something. Text view equals text view. My bad. Equals text view. Find view by id r.id dot text view. And then now it's as simple as text view dot set text, and you will give it the message. And now when you run this, it will show in this text view whatever you typed in and sent using this intent. Pretty cool. But now let's do some other really cool stuff. We will do that with the getting photo and opening the Maps app. So now we're going to create another set on click listener. We'll do that with the get photos button dot set on click listener, and you can start you type in new, and then you can start typing on click listener and it'll complete it for you. And what do we want to do? Well, as you probably guessed, you first have to create another intent. Intent equals new intent. However, this time we're not really starting another activity. This is different because now we are requesting information from another app, specifically photos. You do that, and I'll include resources in the video summary at the bottom. But what you're doing is intent dot action. Sorry, it's all action dot get content. And actually, let me actually just show you the documentation here. It's actually hold on, sorry. It's on the Android site. You can see common intents, and we are doing the which one is it? Photos. Yeah. Wait, this is for later. Ignore that. Sorry. Okay, action get intent, and then we will action get intent. Where was it? Sorry. Okay, action and this is basically saying in this intent we will be getting action getting content from another app. Action get intent, and then the intent dot set type will then be image, like this. And like I said, I'll be showing this a bit more later. Actually, maybe it's in here, image. No, it's not in this. So this is actually will be used for when we use it to start another activity, such as photos. Not photos, maps in the next one. So it's setting. So this is saying it's dash set image, like that. That's how we do that. Now it's saying we expect to receive an image, and then we'll do start activity, but it won't just be start activity this time. It'll be for result. What does that mean? Well, think about it. We expect a photo to be handed back to this app, so we want a result. And the way we then handle this is first, obviously, you pass an intent. However, now we're going to have another, we'll call it select image. And the way this will be treated is just like this one, public static. This one actually takes that int, select image, and let's just give it, how about 1. And now if you see, now it knows this request will have the specific ID select image, which is 1. And I'll show you how to refer to that now. The way we handle the start activity for result is by having another function that actually is overridden. So if you start typing on activity result, you'll actually see that as one of the options. And what happens is that this function is called when data is returned. And if you notice, it takes in a request code, result code, and intent data. And I'll show you how to use these. And you do not want to override or delete this super.on activity result. So just space that down. So the first thing we need to check is first, is the result code, which is passed in, is it okay? Because if there's an error, obviously this won't work. So if the result code is okay, this is just a built-in like value, and then we can continue. So first, if the request code equals select image. What's this saying? So let's say you had multiple of the start activity for result. Then this function will always be called, but you need to know exactly which intent is returning something. So this is why it's kind of saying if the request code was this one, then we know to execute this code. Let's say we called start activity for result with a whole different function or different use. We'd have another request code that you could say, let's say, is it, let's say like get favorites. But obviously this is just an example, but we don't have that. But we just have select image. Okay. Now, what happens if we get it? So these are just, trust me on this implementation. Basically, URI is kind of like, it's kind of like linking it's kind of like an address for some data value in Android. And we're just going to call it selected image URI equals data.get data. And if you see, actually, this returns a URI type. And it's now selected image URI now basically is connected to the image we received. And it's always easy. Image view.set image URI, selected image URI. Now, when this is returned, whatever the URI is, it'll be passed into this function, which will now set the image in the view to this URI. Now, when I run the application and I click on Get Photos, because of the intent and we specifying it's an action get content type with an image, now when we go here and select an image, the for result that is returned knows that we need to set the image view to the URI for the data that we passed back. And you have this, it is shown by the fact that, well, the image shows up here. And that's pretty cool. Now let's do the one last thing, which is open maps. How do you think we will start this one? You're probably right. All we have to do is open maps button dot set on click listener, new, start typing on click listener, it'll complete. And yep, you guessed it, we're going to be defining an intent here. Intent equals new intent, and this time it'll be intent dot action view. And this is actually what I wanted to show before. I kind of did too quickly last time, but I'll be putting this in the description below. But this is just a quick guide of some cool intents you can do with Android. And this is some kind of ways you can interact with other apps on the phone. What we're going to do is maps. And it shows it very simply. The action type is action view, which, as you remember, we put right there. And we can add in some more extras. And what we really did here, or what we will be doing here, is we will be using this functionality where you can pass in data and make the app that you open respond to what you pass in. And let's use this one. How about, let's see, this one. What this will do is show the map at the given longitude and latitude with a string label, and that's the label there. So we'll call it treasure. How about that? And it kind of gives a hint. It says data URI scheme. So the way you then pass this in is, once again, this, well, you see URI is used quite frequently. You do intent dot set data, and you're just going to give it URI dot parse and the string we just copied. This is syntax you'll kind of get to know as you get more experienced. And basically what this is doing is not only is it like telling the Maps app to open, which actually we have to do start activity intent. And notice we don't have to do for result because we're not expecting the Maps to return anything. When it opens, Maps will then parse this, and it knows that it has to, okay, location, geo, longitude, latitude, and have this label, treasure. And I'll show you guys what that looks like. But yeah, it's actually as basic as that. And I'm just actually going to run through a few more that you can do that I find particularly useful. There's a lot. Actually, they all are pretty useful. But I like email. That's a really nice example. So what you can do is, if you notice on Android, when you click on a share button, lots of times emails pop up, like email apps, like Gmail. And you can specify, like, you want an email app to open. You can even specify exactly what the text will be, what the subject will be, and whom all it'll be to. And that's pretty cool. You can do a lot of cool stuff, and I highly recommend checking this out. And like I said, I'll be putting the link in the description. Now let's test what we just added. If we click on Open Maps, Google Maps opens, just as we expect. Take some time. And remember, if you guys have had any questions along the way, you know how to contact me. You can also leave just comments here. You can also link to a specific time in the video. I'll get back to them. And here we go. It's loading. If you see, it has the longitude and latitude we specified, and it's also labeled as treasure. It's pretty neat, I think. It's really cool to see, what all you can do with it. And there's a lot of things. You can Google. There's lots of resources online. Interact with so many apps. Really, what you can do, you're not really limited to anything. And quick recap now. So we have all the functionality we wanted. Quick recap. So we defined variables here. Basically, what we're doing is we're creating an on-click listener. The start activity button uses intents. Actually, all of these use intents. But what this one is doing is it's starting another activity, and that's specified here in newActivity.class. And if you notice, actually, all of these are using the same, all these are intents, but they all have different constructors. Well, actually, these two have the same constructor. This one doesn't. And that's because one is explicitly launching another activity within our app. And you have the newActivity.class, which is the class that'll start. You're putting in an extra using this key, extra message, and the value we're passing in is message, which is just whatever the edit text has. And you start activity, and obviously that starts. Get photos is doing an intent.action get content, and the system knows this to be okay. The app is requesting to get something, and the set type is image, so it knows, okay, let's open up the photo viewer. And you start activity for result because you expect to receive data back, which is obviously the photo, and that's where onActivityResult is called. And here we are just checking to make sure, okay, there were no errors. Result, okay. The request code was select image, which corresponds to what we had here. And then what we're doing is we're getting the URI for whatever data there is. And that's just one of Android's ways of handling data, like I was saying earlier. And you're setting the image to whatever the URI is. And that's why the image shows up in our image view. And the last one is for maps. Again, we're using the constructor intent.actionView. The system knows this to open maps. We're sending additional information into maps, and this can be found on lots of documentation online. And then you're just starting the activity. And as a result, you have some functionality or a basic understanding of how intents are used. And honestly, if you really need to do a lot more with it, which you probably will, I highly recommend you look online, because there are so many resources there that show exactly how to use intents. These are what you'll most likely use. There's a few more things you can do. However, if you need to do that, I can link you to some resources in the description. But like I'm saying, these are the three main things at least your app will be doing to interact with other apps. So I hope this was useful, and good luck.